Hi, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to another exciting tutorial with your boy Salomo from Aero Studios, and in this episode I'm going to be showing you how I work on this image, how I process this image, and everything I'm going to be doing is solely in Photoshop CC. This particular version is actually Photoshop CC 2017. Now I know it's really outdated, but who cares really? Okay, so in subsequent versions we're going to be moving over to the 2020 or probably even 2021 as soon as it comes out. But then, since we still have the very same tools, we're just going to be working with the very same tools that actually present in all these versions, so we would still have that compatibility. All right, so first thing I would be doing would usually when I work on images, first thing I like to do is go in and actually work on blemishes. If we have a couple of skin blemishes here and there, just get to work on that. Okay, so what I need to do is to create a new empty layer, and doing that, sorry, okay, I just hit the wrong thing. Okay, so doing that, I would actually drag this to the icon, the new create new icon. That's to duplicate anyway, but then we do not actually want this to be duplicated. We want an empty layer, so we create a new layer. You see that? So once you click a new layer, it's come on. So I would rename that as skin blemish. Okay, sorry. Alright, so once we're done with that, I'd like to go over and grab the spot healing tool and make sure that sample all layers is selected on this image. You need to make sure, like, this is very important because we're not working on the image layer itself, we're actually working on a separate layer, so we could always come back in case there are any mistakes, and this is a non-destructive way to work with the spot removal tool. Okay, so you need to make sure that this guy is checked, the sample all layers is checked. So once with that all set, I guess we're good to go, so we could go on to remove the blemishes. So I'm just going to do that real quick. Okay, so I guess that is good. We have done quite a bit of skin blemish removal, and I guess this is okay, we're good to go. We've actually done quite a lot. So once we turn off this layer, you can notice that quite a couple of guys here have been smoothened out. Okay, so that works nice. Now one thing I like to note out is that regularly, when you're working on very serious retouch projects, what you'd like to do is, I guess, you don't necessarily have to use the spot removal, the spot healing brush tool. If you're going to be doing that, I feel it's best for you to work with the clone stamp tool, or at least the healing brush tool. That makes way more sense when you're working, and you could always replicate the skin texture and all that. So that's a better bet when you're going to do something, probably if you have way more time on your hands to clear up the blemishes and fix all the imperfections in the skin. Okay, so once that is set, next thing we'd like to do is to go into the next step, where we're going to do the frequency separation. And so the next thing I'd like us to move on to is the frequency separation. Now we're going to be working with the ultimate retouch panel. That's basically what I work with. I love the way everything is arranged in the panel. It's not a very popular panel that is out there, but it does the work really nice. It does a very great job. So first thing, we have a bunch of options here that we could work with. This is actually a 16-bit yeah, this is a 16-bit file, and it's on auto detect, so I don't necessarily need to specify if I'm working on a 16-bit project or an 8-bit project, sorry. So it just picks that automatically. And personally, if I'm going to be taking way more time, I like to work with the 3 frequency separation, Gaussian blur or surface blur, but usually I work with the Gaussian blur. But for this particular tutorial, we're going to be working with the normal 2 frequency separation Gaussian blur. Now, if you do not know how it works, you go check my channel. You can check my channel. I already did a video if you want to learn how to do the frequency separation manually in that's an 8-bit project, which is usually quite a lot of us work on 8-bit projects. Well, it all depends on what you're doing anyway, but I already have a video made on that, making a frequency separation manually. That's in case you're stuck with a computer where you don't have actions, you don't have panels, nothing to work with. You could always do your frequency separation and come out with the normal results. Okay, so you could check that in, I'll probably drop a link in the description below so you could find that video. All right, so clicking on that, just pick up a portion of the skin. Here we have quite a lot of detail, so we do that, just drag the radius up till the point where we do not have any details anymore. I think this is actually fine. So 3.5 pixels. Normally I go ahead and buy, but I love it when my beauty skin retouch is full of when you're working with very tiny fine skin details. So have this at the back of your mind. When you work with large radiuses, most times you get you don't get fine details when you do your frequency separation. It's not necessarily once you work with this and your experience and all, you get to notice the differences between different radius values, but then you could try to experiment and see how that works. Well, hopefully in future I'm actually going to be making a video on that, so you could know what radius for a particular fill you'd be selecting. All right, so let's get that done, and the panel just sets everything up for you. You notice we have a volume retouch and then a volume retouch, the manual. Yeah, so basically this is done in such a way that if you make a mistake, you could always revert back to the original and come work your way through the process again. And you automatically selects the mixer brush tool for you and selects the volume retouch where you do your retouching, your mixer brushing. All right, so just take up the radius and get those areas from light to dark and even out the fall off and gradient. All right, so around here. So I'm just going to do this quickly, and I'm just going to do this quickly for the sake of this video. And so that's a quick retouch that we just did. And beautiful thing about retouch, when you actually retouch your skin, is that you could always if you feel you've gone too hard on it, you could always drop the opacity and have something a bit mild. So usually for a lot of people, most times they like to retouch as hard as they can, then come over to the opacity and drop the opacity of your low frequency, and get to have that sweet spot in between, and sort of everything out. So before we move on, I'd like to give a shout out to the model. Her name's Chloe. She actually came up for the shoot. It was on quite a bit on a short notice, and she had everything sorted out, and makeup was done by Sasunji Empire, and the makeup was done by Sasunji Empire. She came through too as well, and every lighting setup was done by Z-Bright Imaging, and he does a great job on most of my shoots. And you should actually check him out on Instagram at Z-Bright Imaging, Z-Bright_Imaging. Yeah, so Once I'm actually done with the frequency separation, next thing I actually do is to dodge and burn, just to give some more characteristic feel to the face, that the shape, more like shaping out the light and contouring the face, giving it more depth and all that, depending on what you're actually looking for. But basically that's what I do. That's what I'm always on the lookout for when I'm working on global dodge and burn. Now, not all the time I just move on to, it's not all the time I actually move on to the global dodge and burn. Sometimes you might actually still need to go down and do some micro dodge and burn and clear out a little bit of imperfections here and there, just to even things out. But for this image, the model actually has a nice skin, so I could actually do well to skip that and just go on to global dodge and burn. Right, so for global dodge and burn, I feel we just need to come over to the third part of third section of ultimate retouch, and it's over here. So you have a bunch of options, about 4 options here to choose from when for your methods of dodge and burn. So usually what I like to do is I work with the overlay for burning, and then I work with soft light for dodging. It gives the same results. Like, you could actually work with soft light and do your dodge and burn, but I just like to separate them because I do not want to do my dodging on the same layer as the burning. So I just do that because most times I do not rename these layers. I do them on the go. A lot of times I don't have a lot of time on my hands when I'm retouching, so I do it on the go. So I just separate that so that I can always come back, and I know that whenever I see the overlay, I'm working with the burn on that layer, and then whenever I see the soft light, I'm working with the dodging on that layer. So let's go straight and let me show you how that works. Now, just a quick thing before we start, you need to know that when you're dodging and burning, usually you dodge areas that are bright, so you're more like trying to create contrast for yourself, on the screen, on the skin, sorry, on the face. But basically, not necessarily contrast. You're more like creating more depth on the skin area, face area, giving more shape to the face and all that, depending. If you really know how to use the dodge and burn properly, you know how to do your dodge and burn properly, you could end up reshaping someone's face. Well, it's all art, so you could always decide to do whatever you want to do as a photographer, but then make sure you clear off with the model or your clients. If you're doing that for a client, then you need to make sure you're doing that, you clear off with the clients before you do that. But if it's strictly 100% your work, you could go as well. Then if you have 100% rights to it and everything, like, you could do whatever you want, and you're not going to be having much of issues. So let's go straight into the dodge and burn. Alright, so usually when I'm done with dodge and burn, a lot of times when I'm trying to do this really fast, like for the sake of this video, for the sake of the length of this video, what I do is drop the opacity of the whole group. So I place the dodging layer and the burning layer into one group, and let me quickly rename that dodge and burn, and place them into one group, and just drop the opacity just a little bit, because a lot of times when you're doing this on the go, you take it a little too far because you don't pay attention to a lot of details. But you can see that just that little has gone quite a long way to changing the whole face, the shape of the face, and then also the way the light is perceived on the image. So you can see that makes quite a lot of difference, just that little we just did. I feel we could do a little bit of burning just above the lip here, just in between here. We could do a little bit of burning here just to create some more depth. and as well. And also you need to remember that when you are sorry, we need to be on the soft light layer. I forgot. When you're dodging, you're on your highlights. When you're burning, you're on your shadows. Don't forget that. Okay, so we actually got this from this to this. It is pretty fine. And I feel we could actually go. So next thing I would just do is duplicate this group and merge into one group. I like to do this so I could have a starting point. So every other thing here is beneath, then this is our new starting point. You see, it's just basically the same thing we have been doing. Okay, another thing I like to change on this image is I still want to do another layer of frequency separation, but I like to show you the other projects that are open here, the other images we have here, and I had to get these stock images because I was not really excited with the background in this image, so I felt it was just too dull. Nothing really interesting is going on, it's just there. So I decided to get some bokeh backgrounds and see and experiment with whichever one works. So I felt before going into the second layer of frequency separation, target stuck. Oh, that's not a problem. So before going into another layer of frequency separation, I actually want to see how I could fix this and see which one will actually work for us. So the thing is, I'm actually placing it beneath this layer, and we're just going to work with the masking tool and creating a mask and paint in some black. Now I'm doing this roughly just for now to see the outcome, so I'm not paying attention to the details, not really paying attention to much of the detail, just to see an overview of how it's going to look. Now you see, that's pretty beautiful, but I feel personally the bokeh feels quite distracting, although I think we could drop that, probably drop the opacity or something. But let's see how this other one looks. Okay, yes, proceed. Okay, well, let's see how he looks. I think this is actually better. I feel this is actually better. Although just one thing I might want to change is the hue, because the yellow doesn't really sit well with me. So perfect. So, well, if we take the red, okay, just take it a bit reddish and see what the reds could do. If the reds look a little more on the magenta side, I feel this works very fine for me. It works very fine. So we have this, you know, blending with this, and then the other colors sit in quite well. Or just before we do that, just one more change is go to the camera raw, Ctrl Shift A, hit Ctrl Shift A, and for this particular step, what I want to do is to blend the Okay, so I just decided to bring this in because I noticed that the lipstick doesn't really blend so much. It's not much is close to the strip and the dress here. You know, it's actually red, so we'll see if we could get to correct that. Either we take, I feel it's going to be better if we take the magenta towards the red, and it gives us that overall reddish tone in the image, and we could start dragging this guy just a little bit towards the magenta, so we could have them meeting at that point. And also the purples, just because of the eyeshadow area, just take it up a little bit. Let's see if we could do some minor adjustments here. Always definitely going to come back to make some more adjustments, but I guess all this work, and so we'll work with that. Now, once that is set, we come back to the background and just try to redo this now. You can see that the red actually hits properly now. Just a little bit, and drop the saturation a little. See what we have with the magenta. Okay, don't really have much of those tones here, so we'll come back to master and yeah. So this looks pretty to me already, and we could take the lightness down just a little bit so we could have more of the focus on the model. So checking them out, I prefer this, so I'm going to be taking that other guy out. And now we could go in and clean up the edges. Now it's a good thing that we're working with the mask, so we still have those details, those tiny details that we could work with. So now what we just do is paint. Let's get the closer details. Okay, so I guess pretty much that is good. Just a little bit of touch-ups that we could do, just a few things that we could do just to make it look a little more realistic. I would need a very soft brush, something small, and then just paint. Alright, so just painting up on edges. And we need some lightning, although we don't have that glow. Okay, so far this works for me, and I guess we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Control Shift Alternate E, or on the command on the Mac you'd be hitting Command Shift Option and E all together, and what it does is that it merges all the visible layers and then into one, but then doesn't merge them down, or it creates a new layer. So this is everything that we have so far, more like creating a snapshot and putting it on that one new layer. So I just called this the base layer, and now we could actually come back to do the final retouch. Alright, now for this particular one I'd want to go over to about a full somewhere around 7.0. Okay, yeah, I guess. And my reason for this is because I want to create some bigger details. And we don't really have to be zoomed in for this. You know, the texture that comes up when you work with such radius is usually bigger. So now that's something I personally just want to work with at this point in time. And if you notice, this area looks all textured up. Let's just get in there. In there too. So we have this and this. And so we took it a little too far, which is just fine. And drop down the opacity of that layer just a little bit. Have you noticed is the before and the after? Now works fine. Okay. Lastly, Oops. Okay, lastly, I guess we'll be working with the skin tone action. So the first thing we do is sample shadow area, which is this, and then sample a mid-tone next. The mid-tone would be somewhere around here, but I don't like this tone, so let's work with something of this. And the highlights would be sampling somewhere around here. It has more of this pinkish tone. That's weird. So let's pick random spots. I think this works better. I decided to merge all layers down just to fasten things up a little bit. The project was getting a little heavy for the hardware. So I'm actually working with TIF format, so file size was getting really heavy. Right, so next we're going to be doing is we're going to work on the eyes. We'll get those eyes to pop out. Work with them. So we're hitting up the eyes tool, an ultimate retouch panel, and usually I work with about a radius of 7 or 6, depending on how sharp it looks. I guess that's okay. And once all is set and done, what you need to do, the first thing is the iris boost. Okay, so all we need is just to have that sharpness in the iris, or you could also decide to, sorry, we need to be selected in white, so you do the same thing for second iris. We'll come over bright eyeball, so we want this eyeball to actually be bright. The next thing, bright iris. So just hit that up once, But the thing is, we don't necessarily need that. It doesn't look so nice to me, so we're just working with one of those. Let's see what happens if we actually decide to boost this guy up a little. Well, not so bad. Not great either. So let's take down the flow of the brush and just have. Now I understand basically what we're meant to be doing. We're actually meant to do this on the bright eyeball. So that's what we're meant to do. Take the opacity up a little, then erase areas, the outer areas. I think we can still take the opacity up a little and do some erasing on these other sides if they seem too bright. Okay, feel somewhere around there is a sweet spot. And one last thing that I'd like us to do, just going to merge this down now. One last thing I'd like us to do is to fix up this portion over here. So I'm going to use a new layer and work with the clone stamp tool, but for this you need to be zoomed in just to clean up those areas. So sample over from here and replicate over there. So you just keep doing the same thing until you've replicated over the eye. And that's fine, because we still want to preserve the look of the image. We want it to look still kind of natural, like not much of retouching was done. Now I feel a lot of times we have this thinking that when you do beauty retouch, you need to make sure that you take the editing really far. But usually the idea of beauty retouching is for you to do a lot of retouching, but then still getting it to look as natural as possible. The people who are looking at it don't say this doesn't look real, but then it looks perfect, and then it also looks natural at the same time. You get what I'm trying to say? So you need to get that sweet spot to, hit things up. And so far I actually like what we've been able to achieve. So we could take that over to Camera Raw and see if we could do some finishing touches on the image. Okay, so I like to get back some contrast on that. Just a little bit of the shadows going down. Need some, just take the highlights down a little bit and work with the whites. I guess we could take the contrast a little. See, we work some more clarity. Let's take the shadows down a little, saturation down a little. And personally, I do not really want the eyeshadow coming up, because the color doesn't really resolve so much with me. So let's see how we could keep that on the minimal side. So we're going to be, notice it's around the purple tone, so just drop down the saturation a little, not so much, and we could decide to take the hue towards there. No, I do not want some extra sharpening on this. So one last thing I want to do before we end this project is to get back to Camera Raw, Ctrl+Shift+A, and do a little bit of split toning. So I just take that up a little bit, somewhere around red. Some more saturation. I think that's nice. So just bring that down a little, And let's get something more on the yellowish tone, orange, actually orangey. And let's just take up the saturation just a little bit. I think it actually makes more sense with, it gives this warm feel overall. So let's see how that looks. Ideally they should blend the image better with the background, and voila, that's actually much better. So let me know if you learned anything in the comment section below. If you have any requests, you can also let me know in the comment section below. If you haven't subscribed, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also share to other people. And so also be sure to turn on your post notifications so you'll be notified when next I post videos like this. You could also learn with us as well.